How many people do you know that are happy or peaceful most of the time? People who are kind to everyone they meet. People whose minds are clear and whose hearts are joyous in almost any situation. While rare, they exist, and we all have this potential. People throughout history have reached these states of consciousness through many years of meditation. So, are you ready to meditate for 30 years in a remote monastery carved into the side of a cliff in a faraway land? Or in a cave somewhere high in the Himalayan mountains? Me neither. So the question is, can we achieve profound happiness and peace without years and years of meditation? To find out, I studied brain science, cutting-edge technologies like neurofeedback and transcranial stimulation, neuroanatomy, ancient yogic texts, alchemy, neurochemistry, psychology, and I had to read a lot of books. And here's what I've learned. First, I discovered a way to free myself from sad, depressed, angry, and irritated emotions in seconds by learning how to switch from one hemisphere of my brain to the other. You see, the brain is divided into a right and a left hemisphere, and we can only experience fear and depression in the right hemisphere, and anger and irritation in the left. By learning how to switch from one side to the other, I was able to stop almost any negative emotion I wanted in seconds. This was an amazing and life-changing discovery for me. For the first time in my life, I could choose not to experience negative emotions. I could just turn them off, like flipping a switch. The next thing I learned was how to make edible forms of room-temperature superconductors. These alchemical elixirs, for lack of a better term, stimulate the higher centers of the brain that normally only wake up after years of meditation. When I started taking these elixirs, I started noticing things I'd never noticed before. My mind was becoming more clear and more powerful than it had ever been. I was literally becoming more intelligent every day. As I continued my research, I learned that in addition to the brain being divided into left and right hemispheres, if you looked at it from the inside out, you could see that it was also composed of three distinct yet interconnected brains, one nested within the other. The most ancient brain, shown here in green, is the reptile brain. It is responsible for basic life functions, but also for some of the less evolved behaviors and feelings we have. The mammal brain, shown here in brown, was the next to evolve and surrounds the reptile brain. Unlike the reptile brain, which has no positive emotions to give us, the mammal brain has positive and negative emotions. On the one side, this is where we experience love, compassion, and gratitude. On the other side, this is also where we experience fear and anger. Finally, surrounding both the mammal and the reptile brains, there is the human brain, shown here in blue. It too has positive and negative aspects. What I wanted to do was to activate the positive aspects of the mammal and human brains, but what I discovered was that they were being suppressed by the other, less evolved parts of the brain. Learning how to quiet these lower brain centers and turn on the more evolved brain centers was another major key to the puzzle. I already knew how to quiet the negative aspects of the mammal and human brains through hemispheric balancing, but how could I quiet the reptile brain? That's when I discovered an ancient yogic technique that does just that. When I noticed that I was experiencing emotions that I knew were coming from my reptile brain, I was able to practice this technique, and again, like flipping a switch, those negative feelings simply vanished. Practicing all these techniques brought me more peace and tranquility than I'd ever known. Still, there was something missing. I realized that the absence of negative emotions was not the same as the presence of positive ones. That's when I started taking supplemental oxytocin. Oxytocin is the neurochemical that scientists have dubbed the love molecule. I had already learned how to raise my oxytocin to a certain level through techniques I shared in my previous book, 2 Weeks to a Better Marriage, but to make the breakthroughs I wanted, I knew I needed to get my oxytocin levels even higher still. Once I started taking supplemental oxytocin, I learned that balancing and improving my brain was only part of the answer. There was an intelligence in the heart as well, a wisdom that I was now accessing. This was the missing piece of the puzzle. As my oxytocin levels rose, I gained insights into my own heart and my relationships with other people. I understood the patterns I had repeated my whole life and was able to finally let them go. Now I practice these techniques every day, and every day I have new insights. I'm letting go of the mental and emotional chains that once bound me. I'm becoming more and more the kinder, wiser, and more loving version of myself. If you're interested in knowing more about these techniques, I've written a book that explains them each in detail. Most are very easy. One of them is a little challenging, but none require superhuman effort or decades of meditation. If you want to become the happier, kinder, wiser, and more loving person you know is inside of you, visit www.2weekstohigherconsciousness.com today. Take care.